You probably didn't even expect it, but Congo and Rwanda entered the competition with Ukraine and won. So I'm saying this, and I clearly understand that your next thought right now is, what? But actually, it's all true. It's just that according to most Ukrainian bloggers, there's one idiot named Donald Trump. He said, whoever ends the war first wins. We will extract rare earth metals, build processing plants, railways, provide jobs for the population. Basically, we will modernize the seaports, create a tax-free zone, bring in a private army to guard all of this, and make your region the most rapidly developing spot on the planet. The motivation of most journalists and bloggers who have gone through the tough school of American universities is very simple. Everything the opponent, the rival, the adversary says, well, the one who's on the other side. Yes, it doesn't matter if it matches our previous statements or our opinions, but whatever he says, even if it matches, it's terribly nightmarish and will lead to irreparable consequences. Everything our side says, our leader, just what our people say, that's what our people say. And even if it accidentally matches the horror that the opponent said, all of this will go down in history wonderfully and is absolutely indisputable. By the way, even if you see the sun setting over the horizon and our, again, leader or our propaganda leader says that it's at its zenith, then don't believe your own eyes. Do you think I'm exaggerating? Then look at the CNR, where several hosts have already started to come to their senses. I showed it yesterday and the day before. Still, there is an atmosphere of, don't let your facts get in the way of my feelings. So Trump ended a war in Africa that had lasted for many years. I think it went on for years and was taking thousands of lives. Ukraine is closer to us, of course, but that's what I'm talking about. A lot more people were killed there. A lot more died. Just a deadly war between neighboring African countries, Rwanda and Congo. 6 million killed, according to the United Nations. The whole world was there, the forces of reason. Nothing helped. Nothing helped. They couldn't stop it. Trump came and stopped it. And not with cannons, ladies and gentlemen, not with helicopters, and not with rockets. But cable news network doesn't want to notice this. If cable news network doesn't notice it, then it means it didn't happen.
Negotiations, but he warned that ending the conflict would depend on political will and good faith. He is unsure if that is true regarding the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It hasn't been done yet. It hasn't been done yet. Didn't you watch the news yesterday? They literally announced it openly, but the agreement was signed yesterday at the White
House. There it is. Mr. President, this is truly a historic day. Because today a peace agreement is being signed between Congo and Rwanda to put an end to a conflict that has lasted for 30 years.
No, says the host, this is not yet the end of this conflict. They also said that the peace signed between India and Pakistan would not last, and that the nuclear production in Iran was not bombed. So basically, everything Trump does is terrible, won't happen, won't last.
You said it, and it seems like you agree with Pete. He says that the media has some kind of desire to disprove Donald Trump. You said that. It happens daily. You think that's what they want? You think he comes in with the intention to say, he's lying, he's not telling the truth? Right, you believe that. It's an established relationship. Do you think he's telling the truth? Yes, I do. Always. All presidents do that. You think so? The president is telling the truth. This current president often tells the truth. Yes, I do. Okay, I also think that he announces some things in advance. Too early. These countries are already included, but the program is not ready yet. I think, okay, that's the news. All right, this is such blatant stupidity.
Do you understand that the host is trying to convince us that Trump is lying about the Rwanda and Congo agreement? But it's actually signed right in the White House. It's signed. We even saw it being signed, and the leaders of both countries said it was solely because of Trump.
Let's introduce it into
The situation.
Let's bring her up to speed. On Friday, June 27th, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of the Congo. They signed a historic peace agreement, brokered by the United States. This was not just some diplomatic achievement. It was aimed at ending 3 decades of devastating conflict, which resulted in the deaths of about 6 million people and forced another 7 million to leave their homes.
30 years of killings, 6 million dead, 7 million refugees. And here is the truth as told by Dr. Steve Turley.
Was the official end. It officially ended the conflict, addressing several critical issues. The agreement covers several key issues and provides for the complete withdrawal of Rwandan troops from eastern Congo within 90 days. The cessation of military actions by the Congolese army against armed groups for 90 days. The establishment of joint security coordination mechanisms within 30 days, and the launch of regional economic integration frameworks within 90 days. Moreover, the peace agreement also has significant economic consequences for the United States, which this lousy cable news network panelist completely overlooked. The deal allows the United States government and American companies to gain access to Congo's strategic minerals, including some of the world's largest reserves of coltan and cobalt, as well as gold, tantalum, tin, and tungsten, all of which are essential for technology production. This is one of the key areas that the Trump administration is focused on. In the era of artificial intelligence, in the era of quantum computing, Trump doesn't want the United States to be dependent on any other country in technological manufacturing in any way.
So basically, everything that Trump wanted to extract in Ukraine after the war stopped, naturally, we will now extract in Africa. Despite 6 million people killed, the leaders of these two countries turned out to be smarter, and so did the population, than the leaders of Russia and Ukraine. They are expecting an economic revival or boom. Simply put, yes. This means there will be no more killings and destruction, but there will be work, goods, and life.
And besides that, this peace agreement brokered by the United States creates a sort of protective barrier between Congo and Rwanda on one side and Russia and China on the other. Remember, this is a region where both China and Russia are actively expanding their influence. And this peace agreement largely helps to bypass that, both politically and economically. And yet, did any of the participants on that panel at Cable News Network, not to mention that semi-literate one, even say a word about this?
Of course.
Of course not. They were too busy coming up with another anti-Trump talking point. But the point is, things like goodness, value, legitimacy, these are not facts in themselves. These are frameworks. They tell you whether something is good or bad. That's what makes
A framework. Aspiration.
a journalist's pursuit of facts is presented as a noble aspiration. This is presented as morally right and just. And this is exactly what Scott Jennings points out at this woman, at this almost illiterate one.
Yesterday, I posted a video where in the final segment I included excerpts from an interview. It's even hard to call it an interview. Well, let's put it this way. From a conversation with Mikhail Katsin, or maybe he's Katsin in Ukraine. He's a Ukrainian blogger living in Europe. And also Yuri Rashkin, I think, is a Ukrainian blogger too, but from the United States. He works for the Democratic Party as a volunteer in some tiny town, but at the same time he writes that he's a member of some city council. Maybe he is a member of some city council, but he doesn't get a single dollar from it. That's not a job, it's just volunteer work. It doesn't matter what a person calls himself. He came up with it, and that's fine. He gets interviews about it. So, yesterday I said that an uneducated, rude, somewhat dumb brute well, let's put it this way. Someone who is busy licking the plates of the Democratic Party.
She and the entire traditional media industry constantly portray President Trump in a negative and demeaning light. Rush Limbaugh always talked about this when it came to the traditional media. It's not just that they get the facts wrong, which is bad enough on its own. The traditional media, as gatekeepers, keepers of information, or at least those who once were keepers of information, tell their shrinking audience. Regardless of whether the facts are good or bad, they report whether they are worthy of praise or condemnation, whether they are right or not. This is the difference between how they cover the Democrats and how they cover
the Republicans. Democrats
were considered innocent until proven guilty, while the Republicans were considered guilty until proven innocent. That's how it was presented.
But for some reason, when it turns out that the Republicans were right, the topic is immediately closed. Thank you to Dr. Tarley for the clear and concise explanation.
Iran's supreme leader has warned Washington of irreparable consequences if the United States becomes involved in Israel's military campaign against Tehran.
Iran has launched missiles at a key American airbase in Qatar in response, according to Tehran, to the recent American bombing of their nuclear facility. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released this footage, stating that Iran will under no circumstances leave an attack on its territorial integrity unanswered.
Over the past decades, Iran has spent more than $10 billion on Russian weaponry, trying to create what they believe to be an impenetrable shield. They purchased everything from S-300 surface-to-air missile systems and MiG-29M fighter jets and training aircraft to critically important electronic warfare equipment such as radars, jamming devices, and navigation systems. It turned out that Russia supplied about 96% of Iran's arms imports. Nevertheless, over the past 2 weeks, hundreds of Israeli fighter drones and even 7 B-2A bombers have successfully completed each of their missions against Iran.
96% of the weapons in Iran came from Russia, meaning that Russia supplied Iran with everything it could. And that means, except for things that exist only in cartoons, of course, it seems like they brought everything else there. And nothing from the United States or from the Israelis. With the attack, the Air Force, and everything else, Russian weapons couldn't do anything about it. Although Russia supplied it to Iran specifically to protect the skies from the United States and Israel. Everything Russia told Iran and everyone else turned out to be complete fiction, just like cartoons.
Not only did Israel destroy most of Iran's air defenses, Israel not only destroyed most of Iran's air defense facilities and assets, but also achieved air superiority over the entire territory of Iran in just 48 hours. An achievement that Russia has not been able to accomplish in Ukraine after more than 3 years of a humiliating war. You see, Ukraine is 2.7 times smaller than Iran. And on paper, Iran has always surpassed Ukraine in infrastructure, missile capabilities, and autonomous weapons production. In the same way, Russia significantly surpasses Israel in numbers, equipment, and global influence. But when it comes to actual combat, these numbers mean very little. Even if Russia were in Israel's place, Moscow would never be able to achieve such rapid dominance or decisive air superiority. This is explained by the superiority of Israel's Western weaponry, better training, unmatched intelligence networks, and precise operational planning. The Ukrainians quickly dispersed their mobile anti-aircraft missile systems to hide them from Russian strikes. Many Ukrainian fighter jets were also evacuated to safer airfields or constantly relocated. Therefore, when the Russian missiles finally struck, they mostly destroyed decoys or empty hangars. The real Ukrainian air defense launchers survived, and when Russian military aircraft tried to patrol the Ukrainian skies, they faced fierce resistance. Ukrainian air defense took down many Russian aircraft. Russia lost more than 75 fixed-wing aircraft in just the first few months, including modern Su-34 strike fighters and Su-35 Air Superiority fighters. Ukrainian pilots, although flying older MiG-29 and Su-27 aircraft, were also able to shoot down Russian planes. Because of these heavy losses, Russia was never able to sufficiently suppress Ukrainian air defenses to fully control
the skies.
Then, with Western support, Ukrainian air defenses even grew stronger over time. Kyiv began receiving modern Western systems, such as MESSAMZEIRIST and Patriot batteries, which significantly strengthened their outdated Soviet equipment. This made Russia's task even more difficult, as the new Western systems quickly proved to be highly effective. For example, in May 2023, the American Patriot battery became famous for shooting down several Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles over Kyiv, missiles that Moscow had previously called almost invulnerable. While Putin and his generals were trying to decide what to do next, their troops found themselves on the defensive against Ukrainian air attacks. Ukrainian soldiers, showing ingenuity under fire, began using long-range drones and repurposed missiles to strike air bases deep inside Russia. In December 2022, Ukrainian drones penetrated hundreds of kilometers into Russian territory and bombed 2 strategic bomber bases. They damaged several Tu-95 and Tu-160 aircraft, which Russia used to launch missiles at Ukraine.
Similarly,
in May 2023, drone raids attacked Moscow itself, slipping past Russia's widely publicized, multi-layered air defense system and striking buildings in the capital. One of the attacks even reached the roof of the Kremlin, which was a huge embarrassment for Putin's regime, although Russia claimed that it intercepted most of the drones. This incident clearly showed that after many years of war, Russian air defense still has critical vulnerabilities. Ukraine found ways to exploit these weaknesses and brought the conflict directly onto Russian territory. Despite Russia's massive air force and modern missiles, Ukraine's unbroken resistance, skillful intelligence, and advanced Western air defense systems have effectively held everything back.
In other words, vast Russia was unable to either capture or neutralize Ukraine's defenses. Meanwhile, tiny Israel, armed mainly with brains, brought Iran, which I believe is 14 or 17 times larger in territory, to its knees.
Someone might think it's all about the F-35 fighter jets, but it's much more than just that. The difference lies in the combination of superior Western intelligence capabilities compared to Iranian, Russian, and Chinese intelligence, and advanced Western technologies versus their competitors. And finally, in the precise integration of forces and smarter strategic decisions made by each side. Even experts agree that Israel's rapid dominance in Iranian skies was not achieved through numerical superiority. The Israeli Air Force, despite being significantly smaller than Russia's, excelled due to its superior strategy and execution. The initial strikes were carried out by Israeli F-35 fighters, arguably the most advanced combat aircraft in the world. Initially, they were acquired from the United States, but after extensive upgrades using advanced Israeli electronics, these aircraft became virtually invisible to radar. The Russian radars that were in service with Iran had almost no chance of detecting these aircraft. By the time the bombs were already falling, the Iranian crews were literally looking the wrong way. The Israeli attack resembled what happened in the first hours of the Gulf War in 1991. At that time, the Iraqi army had the most advanced Soviet weaponry, main battle tanks, T-72, MiG-29 fighter jets, Su-25 attack aircraft, SCUD ballistic missiles, and a powerful air defense system, including surface-to-air, 2 and surface-to-air, 6 missile launchers. On paper, all of this
looked impressive.
However, when American stealth aircraft, especially the F-117 Nighthawk bombers, launched their first strike, Iraqi radar stations and air defense units didn't even realize that an attack had begun. Their Soviet radar systems simply couldn't detect the stealth aircraft. By the time Iraqi operators realized that something was wrong, key air defense facilities had already been destroyed, and the sky over Iraq was completely open.
Why is that a question? Are brains in Israel and the United States better than in Iran and Russia? There's a folk saying eagles are not born in captivity. We perceived it as the impossibility of becoming internally free and independent, but I think we need to look at it more broadly.
Russia disgraces itself almost every day. For the past 3 years, almost all types of Russian weapon systems have shown critical flaws, often making them ineffective or even dangerous for their own soldiers. Russian
Armored units.
including the latest T-72, B-3, T-80, and T-90, have suffered catastrophic losses on the Ukrainian battlefields. Modern Western anti-tank systems, such as the American Javelin and the British-Swedish next-generation light anti-tank weapon missiles, have proven extremely effective against Russian armored vehicles. A key factor is the Javelin's ability to attack from above, striking tanks on the top where the armor is thinnest. This tactic exploits a serious and long-standing design flaw in Russian tanks. The ammunition is stored under the turret in an autoloader. When penetrated, these shells ignite instantly, causing powerful internal explosions that often blow the turret off completely. Ukrainian soldiers sarcastically call this the jack-in-the-box effect. Western tanks do not use such a dangerous design, which significantly increases the crew's chances of survival. In addition to these design flaws, widespread corruption in the Russian military supply system further worsens the quality of the equipment. This is an explosive reactive armor protection block, which is installed on the outside of the tank to protect against enemy shells. It turns out that most of them are faulty, installed incorrectly, or are just empty shells. Poor manufacturing standards and systemic corruption mean that Russian tank crews often don't even realize they're going into battle in extremely vulnerable vehicles.
Just as they stole during Saltykov-Shkedrin and Gogol's times, they're still stealing now. And probably, just like before, there are rules. If you steal beyond your rank or position, either take less or share with your superiors.
Despite all these failures, Russia is still considered a world leader in missile and air defense technologies. A reputation that increasingly diverges from real results. Let's figure it out. Let's take a closer look and prove just how mistaken this opinion is, starting with the widely publicized Russian PLOS-400 Triumph system, a source of national pride that is presented as equal to or even superior. The American Patriot system. Russia confidently sold it to China, Turkey, and India as the best long-range air defense system in the world. However, Ukraine has repeatedly exposed its critical vulnerabilities, successfully bypassing and even destroying several systems with... Only in the year 2023, Ukrainian forces, with the help of Army tactical missile system ballistic missiles provided by the United States, as well as probably drones or Neptune missiles, destroyed at least 2 S-400 batteries deployed in Crimea. Both British intelligence and Ukrainian military sources confirmed these losses. This is notable, considering Russia's claim of supposed invulnerability. Even when the S-400 systems are not completely destroyed, these systems constantly fail to protect Russia's most important infrastructure. For example, the British-French Storm Shadow cruise missiles supplied to Ukraine have repeatedly bypassed the S-400 air defense systems and successfully struck Russian bases and
Logistics centers.
The S-400 was created specifically to counter such threats, but, as we can see, it is not coping with them. By the end of 2023, Western experts noted that Ukrainian missiles were increasingly breaking through Russian air defenses, creating a real threat to Russian civilians.
Facilities.
Russia has lost an unusually high number of air defense systems overall. According to visually confirmed data alone, since 2022, Russia has lost at least 335 air defense assets, either destroyed or captured. This includes 18 launchers, 430 systems, and 60 short-range Tor air defense missile systems, among others. These are catastrophic losses for equipment that is both expensive and considered elite. Even simple, inexpensive Ukrainian drones, some of which cost only a few $100s, regularly broke through the defenses, striking Russian air bases and fuel depots deep behind the lines, causing losses of tens or even hundreds of millions.
I think that as a result of this destruction of Russian weaponry in Iran, Buyers will once again look at Ukraine and wonder what's happening there and why. And they'll realize that Russia was simply lying about its ability to stop Western weapons. Well, they just lied like that, that's all. These are the 3 charges against Bibi Netanyahu that he has been fighting since 2019. The trial began in 2020, but it was interrupted, first because of COVID, then the Hamas attack, and generally other conflicts in the region. He was, after all, a bit busy. I didn't look into it, to be honest with you. I didn't get into the details or the truthfulness of the accusations. But Trump, for example, wrote the following: "How is it possible that the Prime Minister of Israel has to spend days in court over a ridiculous accusation of taking cigars, cognac, and a single toy? This is political persecution, just like what I went through." And this idiotic trial, well, it's all, so to speak, Trump-style stuff. From other statements, other tweets, other ex-posts. He has this thing, it gets in the way. He wrote that this idiotic process is hindering progress toward peace in the Middle East and the United States. It freed Israel from the atomic threat of Iran. Now the United States will save the peace talks by standing up for the Prime Minister. But Trump is not me. He wrote, "I have studied the case. And as far as I can see, this deep state is trying to prevent us from making the Middle East great again." That means Trump.
It has been a priority for the president since he took office to put an end to this brutal war. He is well aware of this, having been a victim of the judicial system that attempted to imprison him. As you all know, you have all covered this. It has been a priority for the president since he took office to put an end to this brutal war in Gaza. It is thanks to this president that humanitarian aid is being delivered to the region. It's painful to watch the footage coming from both Israel and Gaza throughout this war. And the president wants this to end. He wants to save lives. At the same time, the president's main priority remains bringing all the hostages home from Gaza. As you know, his tireless efforts have brought many hostages home, including all American citizens who were held captive there. He wants both goals achieved, and we're working hard to make it happen.
That's all true. And it's precisely because Trump wants to stop wars that everyone who benefits from these wars hates him.
Some people get money.
Some get status, some get a place in the sun.
This hinders negotiations on Gaza and...
Iran, what did he mean? It hinders because, physically and logistically, it really did get in the way. The Prime Minister had to go to court last week while he was in the middle of peace negotiations and working on freeing hostages from a war-torn region. And that's why I think the president was simply expressing his empathy for Bibi Netanyahu, seeing what he is going through with his judicial system in the state of Israel. The president, who the judicial system attempted to imprison, understands this situation very well, as he has also been a victim. Did you all cover this? But President Trump prevailed. That's why he's back in the Oval Office. He believes Netanyahu is a great leader for Israel. The president has worked closely with him to end that 12-day war and destroy Iran's nuclear facility, to eliminate that imminent threat not only to the state of Israel, but also to the United States of America and the rest of the world. He believes Prime Minister Netanyahu should be praised for that.
How similar everything is. In Europe, normal people are called extremists, right-wing extremists, fascists, radicals. Here, those who said that children shouldn't have gender reassignment surgeries were called homophobes. Okay, it's a similar situation in Israel. I don't know, honestly, I don't know whether Netanyahu is a good or bad leader. I haven't lived there for many years. I visit, of course, but so to speak, practically since 1984, yeah. When I started traveling from Israel to America and back, I was doing performances in both places, so I was flying back and forth. And then since 1986, basically, I got stuck here in the States. So, from that time, and Netanyahu wasn't even prime minister yet from that time, I can't say that I understand or know much about domestic politics, but I do have some outside impressions. Well, I'm interested in Israel. I think that well, in general, if there's such a thing as a homeland, then for me, Israel is that homeland, and not just the place where I happen to be born. My family's journey was from Austria through Ukraine, Russia, and to Israel, and some went straight from Ukraine to Israel, and some from Austria to Israel. Well, in general, it just so happened that my branch ended up in Ukraine and Russia, and only later in Israel. So the outward impression is that he is the one who transformed this backward social country. I was there in the 70s and 80s, so, well, I kind of observed things there. I spent almost 11 years there. And there was a primitive socialism there, which in fact is what I ran away from back in the day. Although I really liked everything. I had a children's theater there. I enjoyed working on it. I was getting published, writing, planning to organize a television program. Basically, I was involved in all sorts of activities at the theater, and I also put on some plays at a regular theater. But I was running away from the stuffiness, that provincial backwardness. Now that's not there anymore. And so it seems to me that Netanyahu made a huge, though not decisive, contribution to how Israel has changed. Well, all right, so to speak. Besides, from my point of view, for Israel's security, Netanyahu did no less than Golda Meir and Ben-Gurion. And what they're trying to prosecute him for, at least what we hear about here, is absolute nonsense. In other words, it feels like they've just found a pretext. Actually, we want to get rid of him because of this, but we can't find anything there. So we came up with this, and now we're going to develop it. Maybe it's not like that at all, gentlemen Israelis. Maybe it's not that simple. I'm saying that it just seems that way, from our side, let's say. And so it seems to me that what they're trying to accuse him of, to judge him for, is absolute nonsense. If he's so bad, then tell the people about it, please. And they'll choose another leader.
Today, the Department of Justice announced nearly $15 billion in fraud in our healthcare system that they managed to uncover and possibly stop.
In my opinion, the Democrats stole more than half the budget of the European Union, or at least with their involvement. Let's just say the Democrats. With the Democrats' involvement in negligence, more has been embezzled than half the budget of the European Union. That works. Let's see what people are saying on both sides of the barrier.
The United States Department of Justice is holding a press conference regarding Tsikiruyu, the largest coordinated healthcare fraud operation in the history of the Department of Justice. They have charged more than 320 people in schemes allegedly totaling more than $14 billion.
As part of this operation, cash was seized, as well as luxury cars and real estate, which allows for the recovery of real assets.
To American taxpayers.
And to our government healthcare programs. During this operation, we identified and charged defendants operating from Russia, Eastern Europe, Pakistan, and other foreign countries. These people infiltrated our healthcare system to steal money from American taxpayers.
Here's just one example here.
Just one example. We uncovered a scheme in which a complex operation was run from Russia and Eastern Europe, strategically buying up dozens of medical supply companies in the United States and submitting more than $10 billion in fraudulent Medicare claims.
That's absolutely true, and you'll hear that from each of us. And that's how it should be. This is the largest, most extensive operation by the Department of Justice to combat healthcare fraud in history. The fact that this was even possible, that someone could have $15 billion for such schemes, it's insane, it's a disgrace. But that's precisely how we're under attack now, and it's not petty scammers behind it. As you already hear and will read more about, there are organized syndicates behind this who deliberately want to harm America. And why are they targeting our healthcare system? Well, probably the biggest target of all. It accounts for about $1.7 trillion in payouts. So that's a huge target from our side. And they can break through the protective veil just by getting the identification numbers of our seniors, beneficiaries, or others. And so by using these tools, by using you Americans to harm us,
a whole group of American citizens working in the healthcare system, plus trained hackers from Russia, plus a lot of money that allowed this group to buy more than 10 American companies. Medical companies, and on their behalf, to write any invoices, fake ones, absolutely. The Ministry of Health and someone inside the ministry was approving them and sending them for payment. I think it wasn't just one person. So with Graydon, at first they found about 10 billion, and now they say it's around 15,014 with a good margin.
what we're doing today is changing the very paradigm. We're not just catching criminals and putting them behind bars, but actually cutting off these schemes so that the money never leaves our bank accounts at all. Because by the time we find out that these criminals have stolen the money, it's already gone. They end up somewhere abroad in the vaults of some foreign country, where foreign leaders are happy that they were able to take advantage of the American people.
And here is a visual diagram from the Department of Justice that really shows how this scheme worked for $10 billion. And it's just depressing over and over again. You know, in politics, everything is so divided right now, right? We live in a time when people are so divided into their own camps that they lose sight of what's really happening in the world, right? There are people who defraud Medicare of more than $10 billion a year. And I have two more points for you. It managed to prevent the organization from getting everything except about 41 million out of approximately 4.45 billion that should have been paid. Medicare.
4 and 40 means the number 44.
$500 million in fraudulent payments should have been paid by Medicare. Secondly, in another case related to foreign influence, charges were filed in the Northern District of Illinois in a case involving a $703 million scheme, as part of which it is alleged that Medicare recipient identification numbers and other confidential medical information were obtained through theft and deceptive marketing.
This case really, Chris highlights that United States government programs, especially healthcare programs, are becoming targets for international fraudsters and transnational criminal organizations using stolen identities. Partly because it's quite easy for them. Dr. Mehmed Oz, who heads the agency that manages the Medicare and Medicaid programs, seemed to hint today that they are changing their approach to doing business, trying to implement artificial intelligence and other technologies to prevent these funds from leaking. To stop some of this fraud, the Department of Justice also announced the creation of a so-called Fraud Data Fusion Center to try to gather more information about the identities of these clients. Until now, Chris, fraudsters have easily billed the United States government and stolen billions of dollars.
These criminals didn't just steal someone's money, they stole from you. Every fraudulent claim, every fake invoice, every kickback scheme is money taken directly from the pockets of American taxpayers who fund these vital programs with their hard work and sacrifice. And when criminals defraud these programs, they're not just committing theft. They increase our national deficit and jeopardize the long-term viability of the healthcare system for seniors, people with disabilities, and our most vulnerable citizens.
Why did no one notice this for 4 years before? How did it happen that the audits didn't work? Why was the scheme discovered as soon as the new management arrived? I take it that somewhere, someone is living well at our expense. Or maybe they used that money to buy drones from Iran and missiles and soldiers from North Korea. Or maybe some of the money went to Hamas so they could train, shoot, and operate weapons that someone from the White House gave to the Mujahideen to spread around. Naturally, to go around the world killing Americans and Israelis. Who knows? Maybe the weapons left there are worth 50 or even 80 billion. Again, there are different numbers about this. In Afghanistan, maybe it was left behind, coordinated, precisely with the idea that it would then spread around the world. And that this happened with the involvement of the leadership of the European Union, the Democratic Party of the United States, and the residents of Israel, precisely those who are persecuting Netanyahu. When you think about it like that, it all seems to fit together. Just now, an interview was published with Holden, who seriously warned the country that during Biden's time, more than 1,000 Iranian citizens entered and disappeared in the United States. More than 1,000 Iranian citizens have disappeared. Judging by what I read, 246 have been caught, and the rest are being searched for. So Holden assumes that these are sleeper terrorists, that among them there are sleeper terrorists whom Ayatollah alerted with his address. Yesterday's, or maybe even the day before yesterday's, saying that the fight is far from over.
Among Iranian Americans, there is widespread fear that some sleeper cells infiltrated the United States during the Biden administration.
What do you know about the so-called sleeper cells and what?
Should all Americans be concerned about sleeper cells? Look, under the Biden administration, he opened the border. We have more than 2 million known gotaways. This isn't a guess. More than 2 million people that we know of, based on video data from drones and sensors, have crossed the border. They paid more to hide. We know who they are, where they came from, where they are now, and why they're here, right? So why are 2 million people paying more to hide? You pay the cartel to reach the border and turn yourself into the Border Patrol agents, correct? Or do you pay more to get to New York, Chicago, and not get arrested? Why? Why didn't they pay less to get a free plane ticket to the city of their choice? A free hotel room, 3 meals a day, free medical care, and a work permit after a few months. Why aren't 2 million people using this free program and instead paying more to hide? They avoided verification to not provide their fingerprints. They could have been the ones dealing fentanyl, they could have been the ones trafficking women and children, and they could have posed a national security threat.
Unfortunately, on this note, I will say goodbye. Don't forget that we have a sponsorship program starting at $4 a month, and we will be holding meetings, discussions, and additional videos specifically for sponsors. And besides, for everyone who wants to receive my book, Capitalism 101, as a gift, or, well, in English, that's what it was called, Capitalism 101. That is like a first course, some kind of introductory course at a university. Yes, it's an engaging read. It's an introduction to the world of the free market with lots of historical anecdotes, eyewitness stories, puzzles, and fables. That is, everything is done to make it interesting and engaging to read. And by the way, you can also think about it, there are puzzles. You don't have to look at the answer right away. You can try to solve it yourself and then check the answer. So, if you want, there will be a link below the video. Just click on it. You'll be asked for your last name or first name. Enter your name, then your email address where it should be sent. And I think there are 4 options to choose from, so you can pick a different system for your phone or download it for your own device. And then wait 20 seconds. If it doesn't arrive, check your spam folder. Because we know for sure that on the first day when I announced this, about 1/3 of those who ordered got it in their spam and started asking us, "Where is my book?" That's the book in the spam folder. By the way, later, every 24 hours you'll receive a 10-minute episode of my project, Roadmap, 10 minutes for brain exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, this kind of morning brain workout is also filled with all sorts of stories and anecdotes. It's good for your morning coffee. Well, you know, so to speak, to have a laugh, really learn something new, stretch your brain, sometimes you need to think too. The link to the book and the subscription to the roadmap will be below. With that, we'll say goodbye and see you next time. Subtitles created by